Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Gregory, and this is Accounting 614 Accounting Research. I want to go over the Topic 4 assignment on Research Financial Statement Analysis. There are a lot of moving parts in this assignment, and I want to be sure that you understand all of the components. The purpose of this is to dive deep into understanding how we look at, read, and interpret SEC Form 10-K reports on publicly traded companies. So you're going to locate a company that files its reports with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Please view my Accessing EDGAR video to identify the company and upload its SEC Form 10-K report. Now, you may end up having to upload 2 reports for your company because not all companies report 3 years worth of data, which is what you need. What is required is your company must sell a product and it must list inventory on its balance sheet. Now, the statement analysis comes in 3 parts. Part 1 is a summarization of your company. So you're going to tell me a little bit about your company, its competitors, what it sells, where it's located geographically, and how does its products sell cyclically. In part 2, you're going to perform a financial analysis using an Excel worksheet, and we will get into that in great detail later. Part 3, you're going to take that analysis that you perform and you're going to use it to compare and contrast your company with one of your company's competitors. And you're going to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of the company. And you'll use the data from part 2 to support this. Now, part 1 is a 1-page Word document. It could be more than one, depending if you know how you format it, but it should be a double-spaced with indents paper. In part 1, you're going to address all of the following: the business or industry that the company is in, what it sells, list at least 2 competitors of your company and why they're competitors. It could be that they could be in the same industry segment. It could be that they have similar products or identical products. Be specific. In what geographical areas does it conduct its business? Now, do more than state this is a worldwide company or it sells its products globally. Go into the website itself, go into the company website, do some research on it, and tell me a few of the countries or geographical areas it sells its products in. Discuss what cyclicality is and how it is associated to your company's product sales. And then include any other items that you think is relevant to me understanding your company. Now, part 2 is the Excel spreadsheet. And in this, you're going to have a set of calculations that are all going to be on their own tabs. And we'll see an example of that later. You will need 3 years worth of data. So if your company's current SEC report only reports 2 years worth of data, you need to go and pull an additional set of Form 10-K reports in the prior year to get that 3rd year. Now, you're also going to set up a tab for your competitor company, which will include 4 of the ratios you calculated for your main company. Here's the specific data that we need. 3 years worth of horizontal analysis and vertical analysis, both the income statement and the balance sheet. And 3 years results for at least 3 liquidity ratios, 3 solvency ratios, and 3 profitability ratios. Then in that tab for your competitor, you locate your competitor that's involved in the same business as your chosen company, and you provide an analysis of their ratios using at least 4 of the ratios over the same 3 years that you calculated for your company. So you list both your company and your competitors on this tab for clarity. So In one section, you're going to have your company liquidity ratios. So you want to use the quick ratio for both your company and your competitors. So from the liquidity ratio worksheet, you're going to pull out that liquidity ratio for the quick ratio. You're going to drop it in your competitors, and then you're going to put your competitors' ratios as well there, so I can see and compare both. Now, the reason you're doing these ratios is because you're going to use these ratios that tell us how the company is performing. Is it performing better or worse than the competitor based upon those ratios? So you're going to use those in your Word document part 3. And we're going to get to that in just a second, but I want to go over some components of the worksheet so that you have a clear understanding. Now, like I said, there's a lot of data involved in this. You're going to be doing a horizontal income statement, a vertical income statement, horizontal balance sheet, and vertical balance sheet. You're going to have 3 sets of ratios for each of these areas, and then you're going to have your competitor information. So make sure that each is clearly labeled in the tabs for that worksheet. Now, here's just a simple sample of what I'm kind of looking for in the spreadsheets. We have some information here. So we have the balance sheet of the company. Now, some of this is hidden, so you don't see it all. And then what this student did was, when they were doing their ratio analysis, they put in the data necessary to calculate the ratio analysis and the other two ratios, and then they created the analysis right here. And we'll dive into this just a little bit deeper. Now, if you look at the bottom, there's a reference. You need to give me the URL link for this data so that I can go back and look at it. So make sure that you have it in your Excel worksheets, and you're going to have it as part of your references in your Word document. Now, let's zero in on the ratio analysis so we can see exactly the best way to present this so that anybody picking it up and looking at it can understand it. The first thing you're going to do, for example, I spelled liquidity wrong, sorry. Liquidity ratio analysis, you're going to give me what ratio number 1 is. And it could be the current ratio. It could be any of the liquidity ratios, but I just pulled the current ratio because it's usually one of the first ones that students will look at. Now, right underneath the name, you're going to tell me what the formula is. And the formula here is current assets divided by current liabilities. Okay. Now, in this section, you're going to identify the amounts in each row. So you're going to give me a row that has the current assets for each of the 3 years and the current liabilities for each of the 3 years. Then you're going to embed the calculation results and use just 2 decimal places. So there's 4 components for 1 ratio, and then you'll identify a second ratio and a third ratio. Now, what does it mean by the word embed? Let's take a look at a couple of examples. Embedding is part of the understanding of how to use an Excel worksheet. It allows me to see and make sure that you are able to do simple calculations in an Excel worksheet. So in the example that we just saw, we had the 1.97 ratio for the current ratio for 2021. Well, if we look at that 2021 information and we pull the data over into our little ratio analysis, when I click on that result, this is what I want to see. So I want to see the cells, or if you don't want to do the cells, you would put in plus 9111 divided by 4622, which would give you the same result. So when I look at summation of columns, I want to see the word sum. I see the column summed up. And then when I see the ratios, I want to see the ratios summed up properly. if you have any questions on this, please reach out to me and I can go over it with you. Now in part 3, the Word document on the analysis. So you want to use that data you calculated in part 2, compare the company to the competitor company. How is it doing with the ratio, with those 4 ratios? How is it performing overall in comparison to each company? And what are the strengths and weaknesses that you see as a result of the ratio analysis? Now, some of the questions we might want to ask ourselves: have the ratios changed over years? Looking at the horizontal and vertical analysis for your company, have things changed over the years? If so, why? But go beyond the numbers. Just don't tell me that they've changed by 30% or they've increased year over year. Give me the factual data that you calculated, and then go back to the company website or the management's discussion and analysis in the ACC614 report and find out what's been going on with the company during that reporting year. That can give you some really good hints. You can also look at the accounts that make up the ratio and try to determine or explain what is or is not going on with the relationships. Now, in part 3, you need at least one graph or chart to help explain the ratios. You can explain any of the ratios you want, as many of them as you want, but it has to be clearly stated what I'm looking at. If I just see a bar chart with colored lines on it and no explanation as to what this chart is about, what it's representing, and why is it important to include it, I'm not going to give you points for it. So you have to make sure that everything you have in here has a purpose. Think of this document as something you would be handing off to your CFO, and make sure it's complete and well articulated. This is going to be 1 to 2 pages minimum. Most students in this class will write 2 pages on this part because you have a lot of data you've gathered. You've gathered 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different sets of ratios, plus 4 ratios from your competitor company. So you've got a lot to discuss here. So be sure that you are utilizing the data in this section. Now, you can combine parts 1 and 2 into one Word document. Just make sure that you separate out part 1 as a header and part 3 as a header so that I know which one I'm reading. So don't simply state that one year was better than the other, or ask the reader to refer to the Excel file. Pretend that Excel file does not come with this document, and you're going to have to explain it to me. Here's a suggestion for your Word document. You'll have your cover sheet. Then you can start out with part 1, company profile, and you can have 3 headers: the name of your company and tell me about your company, your competitors and tell me about your competitors, and then talk about cyclicality. Then you can skip to a new page if you want and type in part 3, comparison of company and competitor. Put in your ratio analysis results. What did you see looking at the ratio analysis for your company overall, and then your competitor company? What do you see based on the results and whatever information you can get on the strengths and weaknesses of each company? And then provide that graph or chart with the explanations. Then on a new page, you're going to type your references. Now, this is going to require at least 2 academic sources. One academic source can be the ACC614 reports from your company and your competitor company. They are not separate academic sources. They're considered one academic source. So you're going to find one academic source beyond your ACC614 reports that helps to explain and support your position. Now, at least 2, Most students in this class that have taken it before with me use at least 5 or 6 references, so gauge it carefully. Remember, anytime you're using a statement of fact, you're going to have to use a citation and a reference. Always, always review the rubric to make sure that you have all the criteria met. Submit this through Lopeswrite. Follow APA for full credit. And review your work before submission to catch any grammar, punctuation, paragraph mistakes. Please don't send me a document that's filled with grammatical errors or that has really, really long paragraphs or really, really short paragraphs using one thought. By now, you should understand how to write good structured paragraphs. If you don't, go check out the Writing Center. Include references, as I said, both on the Excel worksheets, each tab, and your Word document in the separate reference page. And you don't need a separate reference page for part 1 and part 3 if you combine them together. If you give me 2 separate documents, you need 2 separate sets of references. Finally, use my feedback for continued improvement. If you have any questions, please post them to class questions for the benefit of everyone. You can send me a Halo message, or you can set up a meeting with me through Calendly. Have a great week, and I'll see you in the classroom.